with LEC at the moment. Vitality continues to be disappointing.
We don't talk about Vitality on this show, man. It's you know what? Here's what's sad. People won't
Inspired
get this
to Vitality. Let's go. Inspired to Vitality.
It would be an interesting move. The problem with that is that that's exactly the biggest problem with this whole topic. I'm going to do this whole thing when we have the show tomorrow with Dom, but we're going to definitely get into it. But basically, the problem is this. I actually think Bo is one of the craziest mercurial talents I've ever seen as like a player in a big teammate, because he does have games where he looks not just he looks like far and away the best. Like it's like I made it in my video, dude. He does look like what he was supposed to be, like some like actually cracked out Korean Chinese jungler who you should never even had a chance to get in the West. But I tell you what, he also has games, and everyone obviously just saw it on this playoff run recently, that are really bad. Like all world bad. Yes. So that's the scenario. You would never have considered before this split ever removing him. But I don't know, mate. That's the problem. If you could actually get a really stable jungle like Inspired, you might consider it. You'd have to at least think about it, right? This is the last chance saloon for the summer. Like, if you gamble on boat, you either hit the jackpot or you get nothing, it seems like. You don't even get to come second or third. So
the problem is we just can't know what the problems in Vitality are, because it's not an individual skill problem. Like, Photon looked great for a lot of the split. Bo looked great. Perks actually looked fine during playoffs for the most part. Upset was a little, I think, weak during their series versus Mad Lions, but Kaiser was also revitalized throughout this split by having Upset with him as an AD carry. You know, I don't know if it's rookie nerves in these playoff situations. I don't know if it's the fact that they speak 3 different languages on this team where they can't get all on the same page. I don't know if it's like the coaching staff trying to implement too many different strategies, because as a point I brought up on Power Spike, Photon played is champion pool between the playoffs.
It was ridiculous.
And the group stage was entirely different. He literally had no overlap in champion pool between the last phase of the tournament and this phase of the tournament.
Think how insane that is when everyone was saying he was the best top laner. He just changed his game up completely.
Yeah, now he's not playing TP. He's playing Rumble kind of badly with Ignite. Like, so I'm wondering if Vitality is just overreaching in terms of the number of strategies. Monty,
I'll always love that fans are like that. They'll be like, you predicted that Vitality would win. Are you telling me you knew what Photon would draft? Shut the fuck up, you idiot. Why are fans like that, bro? I'll take it for the Bo one. I did say Bo would be the god. Yeah, I'll take that on the chin. I do think Elspeth was the best. I'm with all that, but the Photon one is beyond the pale, because remember, everyone tries to do these lazy conflations, Monty, of narratives where they go like, it's just like sort of last split as well, when they were like overrated in BO1. It's not at all like last split because they didn't have Upset. And then secondly, Photon was amazing last split the whole way through. So actually the people who let the team down aren't even the same necessarily. It's a totally different. To me, this Vitality has nothing to do with the last Vitality. Whatever problems they have of their own.
But I can't know what the issues are, because we've seen all of the highs of these players. And so this is one of those times where you can only be in the team and know what the problems are, and listening to comms and know what the problems are, see which players are having nerves, or potentially just not understanding the calls, or the coaches are trying to do radically different things from week to week. And imagine the chain of translation that has to go with some of these ideas. This is why I think the whole Rumble idea was just deeply flawed, was because even if it was going well in scrims, or even if you think that Photon can play Rumble, which after watching those games, I don't know how you could believe that. Maybe he just really had a bad day and was doing very well in Rumble and scrims. But it changes the entire way you play the macro game. Like, that's some OMG Shanji shit. And like, the reason why Rumble was banned against OMG was because they were very good at executing an abnormal strategy. And why would you shift to that strategy when it's not something you've been using for a lot of the split? Even if it's a conceptually good idea, I don't think that you take that risk. And I don't think you take that risk twice within the same best of 5. I just find it confusing. I mean, yes, they won a game with it, but I don't think it was amazing what they did. It was mostly Perks, I think, in that game, and Upset, who played particularly well. But yeah, I wouldn't go back to that well and try it again, especially when it was really downloaded by Mad Lions and they reacted much better in the final game of the series, including picking the Twisted Fate, which just intercepts the Rumble because he has no TP every time he starts to go to an objective. It's very hard to play Vitality's composition when there is a Twisted Fate in the game that can basically just make sure that the Rumble never really gets the priority on the objectives in the first place. It was a really good pick by Mad Lions. but they had that counter in their pocket. And I think you see the difference between the coaching staff on Mad Lions and Vitality. And maybe it's the players who are driving this on Vitality, but it just doesn't make sense to me to shift up your strategies basically 1 week to the next, because you have to translate complex macro ideas to Korean and Chinese. And you don't know if all of the players are even understanding them in the same way, right? Because you say one thing, and then it gets translated into Chinese, or it doesn't. That player, you just have to hope that Bo understands enough English. And then you say the same thing to Photon, it gets translated into Korean, or you hope that he understands it through English. But you have no idea if all the players are on the same page.
Dude, there's a point that we could draw back to that was from your own career. You remember this. When you brought that player, Seraph, to CLG, famously, there was a concept where it's like, look, obviously this existed as some sort of framework, but they just didn't have as like a term the same concept for, I think it was zoning or something. It was something weird like that. Do you remember, Monty? It was some like term that everyone was spamming in the West. And the whole point of those terms, guys, is they're like, the problem here is the actual term is a macro, but that'll ruin it in league. So I'll say shorthand. Let's say that. It's essentially supposed to be a thing where it doesn't contain all the info in the thing you're saying. That thing triggers a larger concept that we all understand. So the problem Monty's pointing out is, even if these players understand what's being said to them, like the words, maybe some of the like associated concepts that we all take for granted actually aren't that obvious or can't be communicated in an instant. That's quite a fair point to make, I think.
Yeah, so it's a lot that's going on in that team, clearly, and these have been they've done a very good job of scouting and getting individually skilled players on board, but also the bread and butter of a Perks team is his shot calling, and it is his macro. And if people can't understand it, you may be actually gimping one of Perks's historically greatest strengths as a player.
Yes.
Now, again, I can't know that because we're not in those comms, and I can't say for sure that this has been an issue. But in the height, in the height of G2's glory, it was Perks' ability to shot call and react to very weird situations that put them into a world finals, that made them become MSI champions. This was their greatest strength.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.